Welcome and hello. This is a video tutorial on HEC ResSim, and in this lesson, I'm going to be talking about if blocks. If blocks allow you to conditionally invoke rules in your rule stack using logical operators such as else if, and else, as well as comparison operators such as equals, not equals, less than, greater than, at most, and at least. You can combine single conditions also using or and to create compound conditions. All right, so what I have on the screen here is a watershed and a network that I've created with a single reservoir and a couple of reaches. So in order to learn about if blocks, there's a lot of overlap with rules. So if you've already learned about reservoir rules, you're well on your way. We're in the reservoir network module. And then what I'm going to do is click on the reservoir tool and then right click, edit reservoir properties. Up at the top, there's a physical tab and an operations tab. So select your reservoir and then select operations tab. Here, I already have set up a operations set with the 3 default zones. What you're seeing here is the flood control, conservation zone, and inactive. Just like rules, if blocks can be added to any non-inactive zone, such as flood control or conservation. All right, so let's just go ahead and start with an example, and then I'll mention some of the other parts of if blocks as we go along. All right, so to create an if block, we'll just go ahead. We can right click on a zone and click add if block. As you can see, there's a lot of other if block related options in this context menu, such as use existing, remove from all zones, and then a number of other if block operations, which are currently grayed out and disabled. And that's only because of the context of what I've selected here in the zone rule tree. Also at the top, like the rules menu, there's an if block menu. So if I select a zone and then I select the if block menu item, I can click new, and that would create a new if block, just like right clicking and add new block, if block. There's also a number of other options up here in the if block menu. So let's go ahead and just add one. Right click, add if block. Now I need to give my if block a name. So I'll just call it if block name 1. Not a great name, but okay. And then now I have my if condition. So every if block has by default exactly one if condition. And optionally, you can add at most one else condition and 0 or more else if conditions as well. Let's just add this if condition and see what happens. So I'm going to give the if condition a name. This is not part of the logic, but we could just call it if name 1. And then down here is the main if block editor. So remember, we're editing the if statement. So this is what we see, value 1, comparison operator, and value 2, which are built using the logical controls at the bottom, as well as some buttons over to the right. So we start by just clicking add condition. It gives us a row. We can add another row by clicking add condition again. If you want to delete a row, we just select that row, click delete. Okay. We can also move the conditions up and down using these buttons after that particular row has been selected. I'm going to start by saying the current time step is greater than, and then I'll select the date time, and then I have to type in. All right, so what I've done, I'll click apply, is set a logical condition that says the current time step is greater than June 15th, or you could say it's June 16th at 0 o'clock. If that's my case, I could rename the if statement to be a little more meaningful. I could just say date time greater than June 15th, something like that. And then when I click apply, it updates over here in the zone tree so I can quickly remember what it is. And then now that I have a if block and an if statement created, I can right click and add a rule. So if you've added rules before, you're familiar with this. I'll just call it rule 1. And then it doesn't really matter what the rules information here is. All right, so we have rule 1 and it's embedded inside this if statement. So rule 1 will only actually be invoked in the conservation zone if the date time is after June 15th, 2024. I can edit that if statement if I click on it, and then I can make changes. I can also add a new statement. And for instance, maybe there's another condition that I want to apply to this if statement. So what I would do is I could say and or. We'll just say and then maybe we'll say time series. We'll use like a model variable. So I'll select model variable. It will be reservoir elevation, and then I click select. It populates down here. I click OK. And now the second part, we'll say if the reservoir elevation is greater than 1490 feet, and I click apply. Now this populates. Now what we have is a compound if statement. Now what that means is rule one will only actually be invoked if both of these conditions are satisfied. To add an else statement, I could right click on the if block and say append else, and then that pops into place. There's nothing I have to do here because it's an else statement, but I can add multiple if else statements as well by going right click, append else if, and now I have the same editor to create the else if condition. And I can just continue adding else if conditions that way and giving them names and adding the actual data here. Okay, if I wanted to just create a normal rule, we've not really the focus of the lesson, but I want to demonstrate what that means. I'll say rule two, and then just whatever information here. Okay, I'm not going to define the rule itself, but rule two is now a lower priority than rule one. Of course, rule one might not actually be invoked because it has to satisfy this condition. If I wanted rule two to be a higher priority, I could right click, increase priority. Now rule two will be a higher priority, evaluated first, and then rule one will be evaluated. Or I should say the if block statement below rule two will be evaluated. Okay, you can remove all these as well by right click, delete, and then delete. And then I will also remove my else statement. Okay. If blocks can also be added to other zones. So I could say remove from all zones or add to all zones or duplicate. So after enough clicking around, you'll probably get the hang of how this works. And yeah, there's a lot of overlap on functionality and editing and overall management for these if blocks with rules here in the reservoir network editor of ResSim.